legislation in order to make it more inclusive and protective in relation to these rights. Proposed reforms intend to reduce fines, decriminalize certain actions during protests, and ensure the protection of protesters. The Spanish government also adopted the National Strategic Plan Against Trafficking in Human Beings, which establishes action lines dedicated to combating human trafficking and supporting victims. Spain is experiencing irregular migration flows, which pose challenges to the safety and security of both migrants and citizens. Ensuring the safety and human dignity of all remains a top priority for the Spanish government. That is why we implement numerous initiatives in the framework of international cooperation on the topic. Additionally, the reform of the regulation on foreigners, which came into force in 2022, is specifically designed to facilitate the integration of migrants into the labor market. As the situation on the European borders has become less stable, Spain has contributed greatly to help those in need. In fact, since 2022, Spain has granted more than 200,000 Ukrainian citizens temporary protection in order for them to escape the Russian invasion. The latest reform of 2024 in the immigration regulation strengthened the migrant inclusion considerably through wider networks with contracting companies facilitating the regularization of migrants and reducing the risk of labor exploitation, ultimately leading to a more efficient inclusion in Spanish society. Also, in order to prove the continuous willingness to address the migration-related issues, we note that the Spanish government has approved new funds to be given to the Canary Islands and to Ceuta and Melilla for a total of almost 29 million euros. To address housing insecurity and ensure access to stable, affordable housing for all residents, especially vulnerable groups, the Spanish government has implemented measures and proposed new strategies and will continue to put efforts to address structural issues related to the Spanish housing market. Social access to the right of housing is a priority pledge for Spain. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Agenda is enacting a plan in order to evolve the house market into one accessible for the resident population. Increasing the investment on public housing is what we are doing now. The government has set a target to build new social housing units in the next few years that will be targeted at people who are the most in need, and specific support measures for immigrant communities and single-parent families have been included in housing policy reforms. The government has pledged to offer targeted assistance to migrant families by providing access to rental subsidies, easing bureaucratic hurdles, and ensuring that they are not subject to discriminatory practices in the housing market. For what concerns the housing condition of the Roma resident population in Spain, as reported by the National Strategy for Roma Equality, Inclusion and Participation, it has improved, reducing shantytowns and substandard housing. As regards environmental problems, global warming and related environmental issues have been a serious concern for Spain, impacting almost every aspect of daily life for Spanish citizens. Due to its geographical location and other contributing factors, Spain is among the countries at high risk. Recent floods and devastation have highlighted the urgent need to address this issue. While it presents a significant challenge, it also creates an opportunity for us for put in practice effective and decisive action. In recent years, Spain has adopted many strategic plans, laws, and initiatives to address climate change and minimize its effects. Key documents include the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plan, the National Plan for Adaptation to Climate Change, and the Law on Climate Change and Energy Transition. Moreover, Spain increased investments in renewable energy, protecting ecosystems and biodiversity, renewing the housing stock, and developing infrastructure for electric mobility. To address the urgent flooding situation, the government has put in place immediate emergency relief, long-term recovery planning, and the implementation of specific policies aimed at ensuring that these groups receive the support and protection they need. Madam President, Madam Vice President, distinguished delegates, I would like to conclude by expressing Spain's commitment to strengthen human rights protection in our country, welcoming recommendations from this review, and look forward to working with the Human Rights Council and the international community to further strengthen our human rights record. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We will now start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewing state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the working group report. I also remind the Troika assigned to the Kingdom of Spain to be mindful of these recommendations. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the delegation of Armenia. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You now have the floor.
Honorable Madam President of the Human Rights Council, Madam Vice President and Secretary, distinguished representative of the states, on the behalf of the Republic of Armenia, we praise Spain for successfully implementing recommendations from the previous UPR cycle, adopting the second action plan to combat hate crimes and the comprehensive law on equal treatment and no discrimination. While acknowledging these achievements, our concern still remains regarding discrimination practices related to migrants. We recommend Spain to ratify the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all Migrant Workers and members of their families within 12 months to ensure full alignment with international human rights standards and incorporate its provision into national legislation. Finally, we recommend Spain to enhance the living condition of undocumented migrants and accompanied minors by implementing a nationwide policy within 18 months to facilitate access to healthcare, legal aid, and essential services in national refugee centers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of El Salvador. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, fellow delegates, distinguished members of the Secretary. The delegation of El Salvador would like to welcome the delegation of Spain and thank them for the presentation of their national report. In addition, the Republic of El Salvador would like to congratulate the Kingdom of Spain for its efforts on strengthening the protection of children's rights on a national level. However, we do have concerns regarding the high exploitation and abuse of child migrants in Spain. Other than that, the Republic of El Salvador also believes that the procedures for safe asylum, access, support, and integration in Spain should be revised. Therefore, the government of El Salvador proposes the following recommendations to the Kingdom of Spain. First, we recommend to the State of Spain, in accordance to the Geneva Convention of 1951, to strengthen international cooperation mechanisms to ensure access to safe asylum procedures, legal support, and integration to migrants and refugees. Additionally, the Republic of El Salvador recommends to the Kingdom of Spain to reinforce policies and measures to ensure the protection of migrant and refugee children, granting them access to support by specialized staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of Kenya. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, fellow delegates. Kenya welcomes the delegation of Spain and thanks them for the presentation of their report. Kenya appreciates Spain's efforts in safeguarding sexual freedom and addressing social challenges. Please allow us to offer the following recommendations to Spain. Firstly, address the negative impact of the organizational law on comprehensive guarantees of sexual freedom by clearly defining the term gender in alignment with international human rights standards and distinguishing between gender and biological sex in the law. Secondly, evaluate current wage and pension levels and develop an annual adjustment plan to mitigate domestic inflation. Thirdly, establish a task force to optimize disaster warning systems, test new disaster warning technologies nationwide, and conduct regular community training on response measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of the Kingdom of Spain may now comment. Your Excellency, Ms. Pinato, if you wish to answer the previous speakers or add any comments, you may have the floor. Your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I would like to thank all the delegations for the observation and comments that were presented. I would like to address all recommendations that were made about the migration flows in Spain. I want to underline that Spain is showing continuous willingness to address the migration-related issues, and new approved funds that we have recently approved in October show that there is a commitment of Spain regarding this topic. The Convention on Migrant Workers and Members of their Family is yet not considered in the conditions to be applied. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We will now proceed with the list of speakers. So I now give the floor to the delegation of the Republic of Maldives. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Honorable Madam President, Madam Vice President, and esteemed Secretariat members and fellow delegates. The Maldives commends Spain for advancement in human rights issues regarding previous UPR sessions. Maldives urges honorable delegates of Spain to take recommends into consideration, since those recommendations will be listing were also part of Maldives' recommendations from last cycle as well. First, Maldives recommends to develop a national statistical database on child maltreatment by 2026 to enable better monitoring and tailored interventions. Thus, Maldives also recommends to expand the Barnhouse model nationwide by 2028 to ensure all child victims to violence have access to integrated justice and support services. Maldives supports Honorable Delegate of Armenia and recommends to strengthen integration programs for migrants and refugees, prioritizing unaccompanied minors to provide consistent access to education, and of course, healthcare and social services by 2027. And last but not least, Maldives recommends to increase labor inspections and oversight in high-risk sectors, ensuring compliance with labor standards and eliminating exploitative practices by 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of the Republic of Turkey. Your Excellency, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretary, and fellow delegates. On behalf of the Republic of Turkey, we would like to commend Spain for its engagement in the UPR process. We would like to commend Spain for implementing the organic law 3/2020 due to the fact that the best interest of the child is now considered. However, we remain concerned about critical situations in different agendas. As a matter of fact, Turkey recommends Spain to enhance a comprehensive protection of migrants' rights by ratifying the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all migrants, workers, and the members of their families. Moreover, Turkey recommends Spain to continue progressively implementing prevention, intervention, and compensation measures to address early school leaving. with a focus on targets structural factors such as socio-economic barriers. What is more, Turkey recommends Spain to ensure the immediate complementation of mandatory training for policy and judicial authorities to enhance capacity building, expertise, and awareness of gender-based violence. In conclusion, Turkey recommends Spain to respect Article 33 of the Geneva Convention and stop pushing back migrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, the delegation of the Kingdom of Spain, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks. You may have the floor.
Okay. I would like to thank all the delegation again for the observation and comments that were presented. I would like to reiterate what I said before about the migrant situation in Spain. I would like to underline that we are taking steps towards the implementations of regulations about it, and we do consider the situation important in our country in order to respect human dignity of migrants as well as our citizens. It is important to note that for us, the Convention on Migrant Workers and members of their family is not yet considered in the conditions to be applied. And I would like to thank you all for these recommendations. I would want to clarify that Spain will consider them all, and none of them, even if noted, will be without an impact. The recommendation accepted by Spain will be the ones whose principle we are in agreement with, and we will apply. Instead, the ones that will be noted are the ones that in this very moment cannot be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to especially thank the delegation of the Kingdom of Spain for the presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of their assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika for the Kingdom of Spain are the representatives of the Republic of Kenya. The recommendation section will be adopted today at 5:10, and the full report, including the summary section, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow at 11 a.m. We will now proceed with the review of the Republic of Turkey. Once the representative of Turkey is ready, please raise your placard. Thank you. You may approach the podium now. We will now proceed with the review of the Republic of Turkey. I now have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Ilaria Bavala, representative of the Republic of Turkey to the Human Rights Council. Your Excellency, you have a maximum of 15 minutes to deliver the national report. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, fellow delegates, distinguished representative of the civil societies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a privilege today to be the representative of the Republic of Turkey to the Human Rights Council. I will now make a few introductory remarks. The promotion and protection of human rights is a priority for the Republic of Turkey. Human rights are the base of humanity, human dignity, freedom, and development. We are proud of our achievements, but at the same time, in a constructive spirit, we can acknowledge that human rights protection requires continuous attention and, where possible or necessary, improvements. Turkey is pleased to participate in the Universal Periodic Review mechanism, which plays a fundamental role in monitoring and in the advancement of human rights in our country. And we desire to express our sincere appreciation to the states that will intervene in our review. We look forward to a constructive dialogue discussion with all the delegates present today, and we look forward to better advance our human rights situation through your recommendations. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the UPR Secretariat for their assistance in preparing our review. And in this context, I would like to thank our troikas for their upcoming work. I will now share an overview of Turkey's human rights policy and practices and, when relevant, address advanced written questions. In alignment with our constitution and with international human rights instruments, massive legislation works, including institutional reforms and policy initiatives, have been carried out since the last cycle to progressively enhance national human rights standards. As part of our national commitment to the UPR process, this significant intervention in the legislative framework incorporates all previously supported recommendations. Notably, efforts have focused on expanding access to justice through the ongoing judicial reform strategy and strengthening the capacity of national human rights institutions, such as the Human Rights and Equality Institution of Turkey, which is now accredited under the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. Since 2009, the judicial system has been the focus of several reform packages, which have been designed to address existing deficiency and emerging issues. The judicial strategy reform, aimed at enhancing judicial independence, transparency, and efficiency, has been updated and further detailed in the latest strategy reform 2024-2028. Which includes action-oriented policies towards implementation of the aforementioned key pillars. With regards to advanced written question of Kenya, our national efforts to better balance human rights, in particular detainee rights and security measures, are reflected in the amendments made on the law of the execution of criminal and security measures. These initiatives point at modernizing the criminal justice system by focusing on the rehabilitation and social reintegration of convicts, reducing recidivism, and ensuring preventive and rehabilitative effects of the punishment. Following a comprehensive approach, the Human Rights Action Plan creates a synergetic network of activities for ministries, public agency, in alignment with the reformative path marked by the development plan and the judicial reform strategy paper. In the field of Turkey's national institution, the Human Rights and Equality Institution of Turkey, which are referred to as THEC, and the Ombudsman institution play key roles in promoting human rights, combating discrimination, and monitoring the country's human rights obligation. THEC is tasked with monitoring torture and human trafficking, while the Ombudsman institution has made significant strides in ensuring effective individual complaint mechanisms. In addition to its domestic reforms, Turkey maintains a commitment to international human rights mechanisms, such as the UN Human Rights Council and the Council of Europe, where it adheres to convention and actively participates in international procedures. Notably, Turkey's National Action Plan for EU accession underscores its commitment to aligning with the EU human rights standards. Moreover, ratified international agreements have the status of national law, ensuring their precedence in cases of conflict with domestic legislation. Our constitution and legal framework underscore our commitment to non-discrimination, gender equality, and equality before the law. Recent legislation, such as the disinformative law, strengthens protection against misinformation and upholds public order. In response to Armenia's advanced written question regarding freedom of religion, we would like to emphasize that Turkey's constitution, particularly Article 10 on equality before the law, alongside law number 6701, establishes a strong legal framework against discrimination. These provisions explicitly prohibit discrimination based on multiple factors, among which we can find religion. Additionally, the Constitution, guaranteeing freedom of religion and belief, affirms that no individual should be compelled to participate in worship or religious activity, nor shall religion or religious sentiments be exploited or misused. As for the other Armenians' advanced written question related to the freedom of expression, in 2008, Turkey's amended Article 301 of the TPC, which criminalized insulting Turkishness. The law was revised to focus on cases that directly insulted the Turkish state or its institution, rather than a broad interpretation of Turkishness. This change narrowed the application of the law to more specific hate against Turkey. Addressing the subsequent Armenia's advanced written question, Turkey, recognizing the importance of protecting the Orthodox Christian, is in the early stages of reopening the Alki Theological School. And as a matter of fact, the first week of October 2024, the Eastern Orthodox Church's Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople visit Ankara to engage in discussion related to the reopening of the school. We're feeling optimistic about the steps ahead.
Furthermore, efforts have been expanded to support the Sunni Muslim practices through the Presidency of the Religious Affair, which provides fundings and assistance. In 2024, President Erdogan commemorated the Armenian community's losses during First World War. Taking into consideration Armenia's advanced written question related to the engagement with the Committee on Missing Persons in Cyprus, Turkey's recognizing how sensitive the situation is, took several steps in recent years to cooperate more fully with the committee. Provision of information on burial sites, improved access to archives, financial and technical assistance, and recent public acknowledgement of the importance of addressing the issue of missing persons. What is more, I would like to underline the 2019 Memorandum of Understanding with the CMP, which, among other things, allowed for the opening of certain archives and the provision of information on possible burial sites in the areas under Turkish control. Honorable President, fellow delegates, and distinguished participants, let me also stress that Turkey is enhancing its education system. Initiatives like the Human Rights and Democratic Citizenship Program and the Mobile Teachers Class support education in rural areas. With 19 million students and over 1 million teachers, Turkey prioritizes inclusivity, offering financial support to students in need. Efforts to improve gender equality in education include increasing female student and academic representation. The Barrier-Free Vision 2030 and inclusive education programs ensure access for children and adults with disabilities. I would also like to touch upon Turkey's efforts to promote women's rights in equal participation in economic, social, and political life, with initiatives such as the tax exemption for daycare benefits for women employees and strategy to increase women's workforce participation. In response to the advanced written question of Armenia related to the 12th Development Plan, the government has implemented policies to combat violence against women, which more specifically strengthen legal protection. We open counseling centers for survivors of violence, as well as increasing access to legal aid and psychological support devices. Furthermore, we are proud to affirm that we have 149 shelters. Moreover, we are raising public awareness about gender equality and preventing violence through national campaigns and educational programs. We're very pleased to share that the proportion of female representatives in politics has risen. Additionally, partnership with the UNFPA aim to improve access to reproductive health services and ensure gender equality. Distinguished participants, now I would like to inform you on our commitment to children's rights, which includes the development of the Juvenile Justice Center to ensure child-friendly procedure in legal cases. The National Strategy document on the rights of the child aims to strengthen protection against abuse and improve children's welfare through education, health, and quality services. The country is addressing child labor through national action plans, raising awareness and improving monitoring. Child victims of abuse receive support to child monitoring centers and the 183 social support line. Additionally, our government is working to combat early and forced marriages with a focus on prevention and victim empowerment. Furthermore, Turkey hosts over 3 million Syrian refugees under temporary protection and more than 260,000 non-Syrians. We offer access to essential services like education, healthcare, and employment. Refugees can obtain work permits, which promotes integration into society. The country also enacts measures to combat trafficking, with strong penalties and support system for victims, alongside enhanced border security. Despite regional instability, terrorist threats, and refugee crisis, we remain focused on addressing complex security threats, always prioritizing the protection of human rights while ensuring the safety and stability of our citizens. We are committed to tackling these issues through dialogue, further legal reforms, and by working closely with civil society organizations.
We will continue to improve our laws and policies to ensure greater respect for human rights. In conclusion, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates, Turkey is dedicated to building a society based on human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We will now start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewing state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the working group report. I also remind the Troika assigned to the Republic of Turkey to be mindful of these recommendations. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the delegation of the Republic of Armenia. Your Excellency, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Honorable Madam President of the Human Rights Council, Madam Vice President and the Secretary, distinguished representatives of the states, on the behalf of the Republic of Armenia, we acknowledge Turkey's efforts in implementing certain recommendations. However, we express deep concern regarding challenges such as minority rights and civic space freedom of expression. We recommend the implementation of a nationwide action plan to prosecute racist hate speech and discrimination against minorities, especially Armenians, Kurds, and Roma, providing mandatory training for judicial officers on law enforcement. We recommend the repealing of Article 301 of the Penal Code and legislative bans on free speech described as denigration of Turkishness. These claims are based on anti-terrorism and discrimination legislation, which we recommend reforming to align with international standards of free expression. We recommend the securement of the Committee of Missing Persons in Cyprus with access to archives and restricted military sites, as well as public progress reports on the location and identification of burial sites of missing persons. Finally, we recommend Turkey to reconsider its withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence. Thank you for their attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of El Salvador. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, fellow delegates, distinguished members of the Secretary. The delegation of El Salvador would like to welcome the delegation of Turkey and thank them for the presentation of their national report. In addition, however, the Republic of El Salvador would like to present its concerns about the age of criminal liability in Turkey and emphasize the importance of considering children's rights on that matter. The government of El Salvador proposes the following recommendations to the Republic of Turkey. First, we recommend to the state of Turkey to consider ratifying the Council of Europe's Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities No. 12 to the European Convention on Human Rights. Moreover, the Republic of El Salvador recommends to the Republic of Turkey to improve efforts to ensure inclusive education and promote social development for all children and adolescents. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of Kenya. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, fellow delegates. Kenya welcomes the delegation of Turkey and thanks them for the presentation of their report. Kenya commends Turkey's initiatives in judicial reforms and human rights education. Please allow us to offer the following recommendations to Turkey. Firstly, establish a dedicated team within the THEC to monitor the implementation of new legislation and develop a comprehensive human rights monitoring database. Secondly, design a human rights curriculum tailored to the developmental stages of students, along with corresponding evaluation standards and monitoring platforms. Thirdly, publicly issue progress reports on the Judicial Reform Strategy 2019 to 2023 and the 8th Judicial Reform Package, detailing completed activities, expected outcomes, and impacts on judicial transparency and efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of Turkey may now comment. Your Excellency, if you wish to answer the previous speakers or add any comments, you have the floor, and your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you. Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates. On behalf of Turkey, I extend my sincere gratitude to the delegation of Armenia, El Salvador, and Kenya for their participation and constructive recommendations throughout this review. Your insights and commitments to advancing human rights will not be forgotten. We affirm our dedication to the UPR process and will continue to engage in meaningful dialogue and reform. Replying to the recommendation of our fellow delegates related to what is known as the Istanbul Convention, we would like to take this time to stress the fact that Turkey is promoting plenty of initiatives and programs with the objective to enhance women's rights. However, we decided to withdraw from the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, as it promotes values that are against from what we believe in, which are our social and family values. It is important to acknowledge that not every country of this room participating today ratified the Istanbul Convention. We have no further comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your comments. Now we will continue with the list of speakers. I give the floor to the delegation of the Republic of Maldives. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Honorable Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat members and delegates. On behalf of the Maldives, we commend Republic of Turkey, our precious collaborator not only for UPR but also for Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to bring up noted recommendations again in their agenda to maintain alignment in international standards. First, Maldives recommends Turkey, the government fully endorse and adequately fund the national strategy and action plan on combating early and forced marriage, with a specific focus on protecting vulnerable populations, including Syrian refugees mentioned in previous UPR session. As a recommendation, unfortunately missing individuals after Grand Hatay earthquake happened a year ago. Thus, Maldives recommends Turkey amending national legislation on defamation and counterterrorism activities to align with international human rights standards, ensuring these laws are not misused to suppress freedom to express or dissent and mitigate Kurdish civil dignity in Hakkari, Şanlıurfa, and Syrian Turkish territories. Maldives further recommends Turkey intensify efforts to eradicate gender-based violence by fully implementing after rise of gender-based violence happened in third quarter of 2024, both in Istanbul, Marmara region, and East region of the country. Last but not least, emphasizing these comprehensive support systems for survivors after leave of the convention, emphasizing these should be placed in preventive education and awareness programs targeting communities to dismantle cultural and systematic barriers for women's equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of the Kingdom of Spain. Your Excellency, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Madam Vice President. Spain sends a warm welcome to the delegation of Turkey. We thank them for taking part in this exercise and for presenting their national report. Spain recommends 1. To ratify the optional protocol to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. 2. To consider ratifying the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. 3. To take effective measures to combat gender-based violence and to reevaluate withdrawing from the Istanbul Convention. 4. To ensure the freedom of opinion and expression for all, and to ensure that human rights defenders, lawyers, and journalists are not subjected to intimidation or arbitrary arrest in undertaking their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the delegation of the Republic of Turkey, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, Ms. Vavala, you may have the floor.
Thank you. Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates, we express our gratitude to all delegation for their valuable contribution to Turkey's UPR review. We are committed to engaging with this recommendation and incorporate the ones which are not already present in our national report into our ongoing human rights efforts. Now, I would like to take this time to stress what we firmly believe is one of our best strengths related to child rights. The initiative of Juvenile Justice Center, which was developed to ensure a comprehensive safeguard in the field of juvenile justice and child protection in accordance with the best interest of the child, and to carry out all judicial proceedings against children by applying child-friendly procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to especially thank the delegation of the Republic of Turkey for their presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of their assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika for Turkey are the representatives of Armenia. The recommendation section will be adopted today at 5:35. The full report, including the summary section, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow at 11 a.m. I now give the floor to Madam Vice President Lara Delgado to give further instructions on the drafting of the working group report. Madam Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. We will proceed to the drafting of the working group reports of the states review this afternoon session at 3:50. Since we are ahead of schedule, I would like to invite you all for a break. The states that went under review this afternoon, the Republic of Maldives, the Kingdom of Spain, and the Republic of Turkey, and the states acting as their troika, must come back to this room to draft their reports, which should be submitted on Moodle by 4:35 today. Delegates and participants not involved in the drafting of the report must stay out of the room, and we kindly request you to be back in the room at 4:40. The adoption of the recommendation section of the working group reports will begin at 4:45, and we kindly ask you to avoid delays. Thank you, Madam President. I'll now give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Now the session is closed. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it is my privilege to welcome you to the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the Universal Periodic Review of the Republic of Maldives, the Kingdom of Spain, and the Republic of Turkey. The session is now open. For the presentation of the Troika report, we kindly ask the representative of the reviewing state operating as a Troika to stand up, walk over the podium. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to deliver your presentation. The presidency will also welcome the active participation of the recommending states during the adoption of the working group report. We will proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the review of the Republic of Maldives. The Troika for this report consists of the representatives of the Republic of El Salvador. Once the representatives of once the Troika of the Maldives is ready, please signalize by raising your placard. Once the Troika of the Maldives is ready, thank you. You may approach the podium now. Her Excellency, Ms. Bianca Vizzotto, General Director of Human Rights, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of the Republic of Maldives on behalf of the Troika. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretary, fellow delegates, and distinguished members of the Secretariat. As the Troika for the State of the Maldives, I am honored to present the outcome of the working group report for the previous session. Firstly, the Republic of El Salvador would like to commend the Republic of the Maldives for its commitment to the adoption of the recommendations, which demonstrates their effort on guaranteeing, safeguarding, and promoting human rights for all. During the interactive dialogue, the Republic of Maldives received 1 advanced written question made by the delegation of Kenya and 12 recommendations. The adoption of such recommendations occurred as follows. The delegation of Maldives supported 1 recommendation noted one recommendation from the delegation of Armenia. They supported all of the recommendations made by the delegation of El Salvador. The Republic of Maldives supported all the recommendations made by the delegation of Kenya. The delegation of Maldives supported one recommendation from the delegation of Spain and will further examine the remainder of their recommendations. Finally, the delegation of Maldives noted one recommendation made with the delegation of Turkey and will further examine the remainder of the recommendations. We would like to thank the delegation of the Maldives for their cooperation during the drafting of the working group report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your presentation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to remind you that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor. Delegates who want to make a comment can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? Yes? You have 1 minute to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to start by thanking the delegation of Maldives for accepting our recommendations. We firmly believe that the delegation of Maldives will continue its activism in human rights and their country to ensure the human rights of law. So thank you.
Are there any more comments? Yes, your delegation of Spain. You have 1 minute. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, the delegation of the Maldives. Spain would like to shed light on Armenia's first recommendation and the Maldives' response during the interactive dialogue. To the knowledge of Spain, to this day, 20th of November 2024, the Maldives has failed to ratify the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, aiming at the abolition of the death penalty, contrary to what the Maldives delegation stated previously. We remain highly concerned on this matter and on the state's approach concerning it. Spain considers the death penalty and related human rights violations of utmost importance and must support the worldwide efforts in order to guarantee such rights for everyone, everywhere. We ask the Maldives to recognize Armenia's recommendation and to urgently address the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Are there any more comments? The delegation of Maldives, you have 1 minute to speak. You may have the floor.
Yes, the Maldives would deeply apologize for this misunderstanding. But the punishment of death penalty cannot be abolished without preceding domestic legislation from Parliament and without public consultation on the issue. Any move to abolish this must be constitutional and reflect the aspiration of the Maldivian people. The government of Maldives reiterates its commitment to uphold the informal moratorium in the death penalty for the state. Judicial reform and enhancing legislative mechanism relating to the criminal justice system takes precedence, as we've said in the last couple of cycles of the UPR.
Thank you for your comments. Does any other delegation wants to make a comment? Okay, I see no more comments. So, Your Excellency, Ms. Clara Tausinga, you now have 1 minute to add remarks.
Madam President, Madam Vice President, and distinguished delegates, as we conclude this important session, I wish to extend my sincere gratitude to all member states for their constructive engagement and thoughtful contribution during the adoption of the working group report. And the Maldives deeply values the recommendations provided, which will serve as a vital guide as we continue our efforts to promote and protect human rights. I would also like to take this opportunity to express our thanks to our Troika, El Salvador, for the support throughout this process. Your dedication and assistance have been instrumental in ensuring the success of our review. The Maldives looks forward to the item 6 session in 6 months, where we will report on the progress made and reaffirm our commitment to this important process. We will remain resolute in our determination to implement the accepted recommendations and further strengthen and advance human rights across our nation. We will do so within our means, capabilities, and resources. Once again, I extend my deepest appreciation to all member states and the Troika for your collaboration and steadfast support. We look forward to continuing our engagement in the spirit of mutual respect and shared responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency. I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report on the Universal Periodic Review of the Republic of Maldives. Are there any objections? Okay, I see none. The recommendation section of the report is adopted. Thank you, Your Excellency, to you and to your delegation for your participation in this review. We will proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the review of the Kingdom of Spain. Once the representative of Kenya acting as Troika is ready, please signalize it by raising your placard. Thank you. You may approach the podium now. Your Excellency, Tan Hui He, Deputy Department Representative of Kenya to the United Nations Office, will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of the Kingdom of Spain on behalf of the Troika. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes. You may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President and fellow delegates. It's a great honor and privilege to present on behalf of the Troika to draft reports of the working group in the UPR of Spain. During the impact of dialogue with state under review helping work, the states delivered their statements and several advanced questions and recommendations have been posted. The Troika would like to thank the delegation of Spain for their constructive and active engaging into the process and their preparation of the report. The Troika of Spain now present the outcome of the working group section. Spain has received 16 recommendations, of which 12 have been accepted, 2 have been partially accepted, and 2 have been noted. Armenia handed in 2 recommendations, of which 1 has been partially accepted and 1 has been noted. Spain has received 2 recommendations from El Salvador. Both of them have been accepted. Furthermore, Kenya has made 3 recommendations to Spain. All 3 of them have been accepted. From Maldives, Spain received 5 recommendations. 4 of them have been accepted. 1 of them has been partially accepted. Turkey has made 4 recommendations to Spain, of which 3 have been accepted and 1 has been noted. The Troika would like to address the impure thanks to the Secretariat for its actually support during the entire process. The Troika hope that Spain's working group report would be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your presentation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to remind you that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor now. Delegates who wish to make comments can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? Delegation of El Salvador, you have 1 minute to speak. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank the delegation of Spain for accepting our recommendations. We firmly believe that the delegation of Spain will maintain its proactive commitment to advancing human rights in their country to ensure the rights to all humans. So thank you.
Delegation of Kenya, you have 1 minute. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, fellow delegates. We would like to express our gratitude for Spain's support for all our recommendations. We look forward to working together with Spain to monitor the progress in the relevant human rights areas moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Your Excellency, are there any more comments? Maldives, you may have the floor. You have 1 minute.
Dear Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed members of the Secretariat and honorable delegates. While the Maldives acknowledges and appreciates Spain's efforts and contribution in advancing human rights, we would like to inquire which of the recommendations presented have been partially accepted by the honorable delegate of Spain and what are the primary reasons upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ms. Pinato, you have 1 minute to reply to the comments.
Is
Have
it
the
on?
floor.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to the Maldives delegates saying that the partially accepted recommendation is the one regarding health insurance systems because we are already implementing it with we had accepted Royal Decree in number 7 in 2018 about about healthcare for all people resident in the Kingdom of Spain. That's why it is partially accepted. Anyway, I wanted to thank you very much, Madam President, Madam Vice President, and all the distinguished representatives of Member State and of the Council. After the fundamental help of the Kenyan delegation today, it is my great pleasure to come back leading the Spanish delegation. And
Ms. Pinato, your time is over.
thank you.
Are there any more comments or remarks? Okay, I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report of the UPR of the Kingdom of Spain. Are there any objections? I see none. The recommendation section of the report is adopted. I now give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Pinato, for her to do her final remarks. Your Excellency, you have 2 minutes. You may have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President, Madam Vice President, and all the distinguished representative of member states. After the fundamental help of the Kenyan delegation today, as I was saying, it is my great pleasure to come back leading the Spanish delegation today. Member states participated in our review, offering occasions to ponder our future actions through comments and recommendations. I would like to express my appreciation for the active and constructive participation of all of you. I would like to stress that the government of Spain has taken in deep consideration all recommendations, specifically the ones regarding human rights of minors. After careful consideration, Spain decided to support 12 recommendation. The partially supported recommendations relate to the initiatives that we are currently already implementing about health insurance systems and their appliance to the migrant population, as stated by the Royal Decree Law 7, 2018. I reiterate my thanks for all the received recommendation, be they supported or noted. None of them will be without impact. Madam President, Madam Vice President, fellow delegates, thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, to you and to your delegation for your participation in this review. We will proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the review of the Republic of Turkey. Once the representative of Armenia, acting as a troika, is ready, please raise the placard. Thank you. You may come to the podium. Her Excellency, Ms. Cecile Vickery, Head of the Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of the Republic of Turkey on behalf of the Troika. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes. You may have the floor.
Honorable Madam President, Madam Vice President, and esteemed Secretariat, distinguished representatives of the states, we are pleased to have cooperated with Turkey as the Troika to the draft of the working group report. Following the session, Turkey has received 16 recommendations. Of these, Turkey has accepted 7 recommendations, 1 from Maldives, 1 from El Salvador, 1 from Spain, 2 from Kenya, and 2 from Armenia. Turkey has noted 6 recommendations, 2 from Maldives, 1 from El Salvador, 2 from Spain, and 1 from Armenia. Turkey has decided to leave under further examination 3 recommendations, 1 from Spain, 1 from Kenya, and 1 from Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your presentation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to remind you that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor now. Delegates who might want to make comments can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? Delegation of Maldives, you have 1 minute. You may have the floor.
Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and honorable delegates. The delegation of the Maldives commends dear fellow delegates of Turkey for their decision to accept our recommendation concerning the implementation of our recommendations. These steps signify a strong commitment to address critical socioeconomic disparities and improving the lives of marginalized communities and also mitigate the terrorism movements. The Maldives remains supportive to and stand at the ready to share its expertise and experiences in these areas for long-term benefits and strengthen humanitarian efforts to achieve the sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Are there any more comments? The delegation of El Salvador. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to start by thanking the delegation of Turkey for accepting one of our recommendations. However, we would like to reiterate the importance of both the recommendations, given because we believe they would enforce the protection of all children. And we trust that the delegation of Turkey will continue its commitment to advancing human rights in their country to ensure the protection of all children and adolescents. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Are there any more comments? Your Excellency, Ms. Bavala, you might have 1 minute to add remarks to the comments made by the reviewing states.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates. We appreciate the active and constructive participation of all delegation. We would like to express sincere thankings to the work of all of you, and we have no more comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of the Republic of Turkey. Are there any objections? Yes, Delegation of Armenia, you have 30 seconds to state your case. You may have the floor.
Madam President and fellow delegates, despite the recommendation accepted by Turkey, we want to raise an objection on the fellow delegates. Because in 2024, the President Erdogan honored the memory of Armenian citizens that deceased during the World War I, but this happened without a formal and resolute recognition of the Armenian genocide, recognized in 2023 by 34 countries. So we want to address this.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the delegation of Turkey, you have 30 seconds to reply. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates. While we recognize the importance of the recognition on what you think to be a genocide, the delegation of Turkey and our government does not believe so.
Are there any more objections? I see none. The recommendation section of the report is adopted. I now give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Vavala, for her final remarks. Your Excellency, you have 2 minutes. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, esteemed Secretariat, and fellow delegates. We express our gratitude to all delegation for their valuable contribution to Turkey's UPR review. We are committed to, I'm so sorry. We value each and every one of them, whether noted or supported. We believe that implementing this recommendation will significantly contribute to our ongoing human rights efforts, particularly in the area of education and children's rights, and in the area of the alignment with international law. We will continue to work diligently to implement these recommendations and further strengthen our human rights record. We welcome continued dialogue and cooperation with the international community to achieve these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, to you and to your delegation for your participation in this review. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with the adoption of the draft reports of the Republic of Maldives, the Kingdom of Spain, and the Republic of Turkey, we have completed the review of all the states considered under this section of the working group. I would like to remind you that all the corresponding documents to the reports adopted during this session will be reviewed. And I would like to recall that only what was shared in the room during the allotted speaking time will be reflected in the report of the working group. In this regard, I would like to thank the delegations for having clearly identified their recommendations, as this greatly facilitated the work of the Troikas and the Secretariat. The full participation of states under review, the high level of speakers and recommendations demonstrate a continued interest on the Padova Model UPR and highlights the importance of the process at the international level. As a president, I found the constructive spirit and broad deliberations of today's session extremely rewarding. This continues to enhance the credibility of the process and ensures it as a success. Thank you all very much for having supported this session, and I wish you all a nice evening. I hereby close the session of the UPR Working Group. The session is now closed.